Welcome to Book Huddle. I'm your host, Karen Reeder. Today I have with us Adrianna Cuevas, and this is just another spooky, fun book that we're going to be talking about today. And so I'm so excited. I love just seasonal reads, I love the book. And so as soon as I think it was within a half hour after finishing the No-Brainers Guide to Decomposition that I got on and emailed Adriana, and I was like, will you be on the show? Because this was just so much fun. So Adriana, thank you for joining us today. Can you just take a second to introduce yourself? Tell us a minute about you in addition, besides being an author.
Sure. So, hi everyone. I'm Adriana. I guess besides being an author, I should tell you that just today I spent the day substitute teaching in a high school biology class because that's normally
Fun.
what I do when I'm not writing. I substitute teach because I was a teacher actually for 16 years before I became a writer. And just recently, I've really enjoyed getting back into the classroom substitute teaching
Yes.
because I love being around kids. When I'm not writing. And so that's what I do. And I live in Central Texas with my husband and my son and just enjoy every minute of it.
That's so fun. All right. So tell us, because No-Brainers Guide to Decomposition is your most recent that just came out this month. Yes, in
Yes, it
September.
did. It did on September 24th.
September 24th. So this is just days ago. Perfect. So tell us, you've written others before though. Tell us about some of the others that you've written, and then we'll get into No-Brainers Guide.
Sure. So No Brainers is actually my sixth book.
Excellent.
My debut was was the Total Eclipse of Nestor Lopez. It's also most of my books are contemporary fantasy. My second book, Cuba in My Pocket, is my one lone historical fiction. I wrote that about my dad's immigration to the United States from Cuba.
Oh,
But
that's
after
cool.
that, I followed it up with The Ghost of Rancho Espanto, which I was really excited won the Edgar Award from the Mystery Writers Association just this past May. That was really cool.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, after that, I followed that up with the Mari and the Curse of El Cocodrilo. But then I also was asked by Nickelodeon to write the Monster High books that tied into their animated series on
So cool.
Nickelodeon. And so those are also my books as well. But yes, now we have my sixth book since 2020. I've kind of been busy. This is my sixth book since 2020
Wow.
with the No-Brainers Guide to Decomposition.
Oh, so much fun. So I see why you're subbing instead of teaching on a regular
Yeah, full
basis.
time. Yeah, no, that's
Oh my
actually
God.
what I love about subbing because I do love teaching. I love being around kids, but there's
Yes.
no way that I could teach full time and write as much as I do.
Right. Especially you've got a family and
Right, exactly. I
join
can't do it all.
right, for sure. Hard to balance it all. Okay, so I just love this. I have just been describing it as just ridiculously fun because it's about zombies and it's so ridiculous. I try to go into book not expecting too much. And so I was like, okay, fantasy is my jam for sure. But I don't know what I was expecting, but I just not to have so much fun. I guess that's what I was so surprised about. So give us the elevator pitch. You just tell us in a minute or two what the book is about.
Sure. So this is all about Franny, who lives with her dad at a forensic anthropology facility, which is better known as a body farm because he's the professor that runs this body farm, which is where scientists take cadavers and they lay them out in a field so they can study their decomposition. Well, unfortunately, some of these cadavers decide that they are not going to be dead anymore. And Franny and
Who
her new
wants to be
friend
dead?
Benji yeah, Franny and her new friend Benji have to figure out why this is happening, before the university campus is overrun.
Oh, this is so much fun. Okay, so let's talk about Franny. So Franny has ADHD,
hmm
and do you mind me saying you also mentioned you have
Yes,
ADHD as
yes,
well? Is that
I
okay to
do.
talk
This
about
so
right now in the interview?
yeah, this is like I said, this is my sixth book, but this is my first time writing a character with ADHD. And so it was really kind of special for me. Um, and it was because I was doing a school visit one time. And in my school visits, a big chunk of my author presentation
Right.
is me talking about what it's like being an author with ADHD, because I find that kids really respond to that. And they really make a connection because I think for a lot of them, they're thinking, oh, wait, like I could do this too. Like her
Right.
brain is like my brain, and I could tell stories too. And so I thought, I really felt like I owed it to my readers to give them a character that was just like me and was just like them too. And so I really had a lot of fun writing Franny, because she really is a lot like me. If you want to get inside my head, poor Franny is it, unfortunately.
Oh, and I love it. And the way you describe it just resonated with me so much that it's like this little spider that you just describe, the little aranita. Is that, did I say it
Yeah,
right?
so arañita is the word for little spider in
Right.
Spanish. The word ADHD is actually never mentioned once in the book.
Nice.
That acronym is never said because Franny's coming to terms with having ADHD. She's kind of in denial about it, and that's why
Yes.
she is describing her ADHD as this little spider that bounces around a web in her head, just is always hopping from one place to another. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I like that. I didn't remember that it's never said because I'm able to figure that out and
Right,
understand that
right.
from knowing about ADHD. But actually, I just interviewed MR Fournette, and she was talking about her neurodiverse character in Darkness and Demon Song, her sequel, Brick, Dust, and Bones. And she has a neurodiverse character that's autistic. And she said, I never wanted to come out and say this character is neurodiverse, and you know this because, right,
Mhm.
who would say that about a neurotypical person? Like you
Yeah.
wouldn't say that, right? And so I love that you just described it and left it there for people to figure out and understand what you meant.
Yeah.
So
Because
that's,
I think too, I mean, I'm showing Franny how I experience ADHD, and the way I experience it is not going to be the way all kids do. I think, we found that sometimes boys experience it differently.
yes,
You
I've heard
know,
that a lot, that girls
Yeah, because I get asked by
are,
a lot of kids, well, miss, when you were in school, did you have that label? And honestly, I did not.
right,
Um, I was never tested for it. I because I made good grades.
right,
And so I think my parents thought, well, hey, this must not be a problem. She's just really creative. She's really active. She's really energetic. And what they didn't know was, oh my gosh, I'm exhausted
oh
because my
geez,
brain just won't stop.
right,
And so I that's what I wanted to present. But I know that that's how my brain works. And that's why I wanted to not mention the label per se, because I wanted kids just to see that, this is just how my brain functions, and maybe you
yeah.
can see yourself in it too. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. And I love that you point out that ADHD brains can work so differently, that because whenever you say, okay, they're autistic, they're on the spectrum, okay, they're ADHD, then people get these preconceived notions that they
Mhm.
think of somebody they know who has ADHD and they immediately put them in that category. And like the two in my family that I know of, that one is the typical that you think of, that's the boy that's all over the place. And but he's kind of similar to you because he gets really good grades. It actually
Yeah.
to the point of frustration that he's like, oh, stupid school. That's the only thing that I'm even good at. I'm like, no, you have other talents too. It's good. And then my other one is so hyper focused. Like
Yeah.
he's not ever all over. Like he's just has a hard time getting things done because he's so hyper focused. And then his
Yeah.
brain does get tired. And like you were saying,
Hmm.
it's like, I think that's definitely this other one, is that he's so tired. His brain just, and I hadn't thought about it like that. So I like that you say
Yeah.
that there's so many things for us to consider about our ADHD, family members or
Hmm.
friends, is I think this helps us have more empathy when we
Yeah.
can understand more of what they may be going through.
Right.
So I love this main character representation in this.
Yeah.
It's just so fun. So, and I like that it's a lot about friendship too. and that
Yeah.
this is something that Franny has a hard time with. And maybe because of her ADHD or maybe because of other reasons, she's had a hard time making friends. And so through this kind of crazy experience with zombies, she's encountered a new opportunity to make a friend, a couple of friends. And so I love when that's explored through a plot line, because that is what these middle grade age kids so much are going through. um we experience it sometimes as adults too still, but that hard time, like I hated middle school. Middle school's the worst for me. I know some people enjoy it, but I'm like, oh, it was the worst. And so, but one of the reasons that so many people associate that with is because of the awkwardness and
Hmm.
figuring out friendship and where do I stand. And so I love that this is, really something that she thinks about and talks about, and that people are becoming more willing to say, yeah, I'm feeling awkward right now. I don't
Right.
remember reading that in books when I was a kid, but people are saying it now, and it's like, yeah, yeah, that's normal.
Yeah. And I think because like we have been talking about hyper focus,
Yes.
unfortunately Franny's hyper focus is dead things, which makes making
Yes.
friends a little more awkward. But
You
luckily
want to go
she
look at the
finds
dead
Ben.
things with me?
Exactly. Luckily she finds Benji who is okay with dead things.
Yes. Yes. For sure. I like that. So, how did I think you talk about, and somewhere I read, maybe it's on the back of your book or something, that you discovered that this body farm really exists in Texas, right? Is this
Yes,
what gave you the idea to do this?
I live right near it.
And how long have you been living near it without knowing about it?
Well, okay, so I live near Texas State University, where
Okay.
it's the United States' largest body farm.
I wonder how
The
many of
first
these body farms there are out there, since this is the largest one.
there are three that I know of.
Okay.
The first one that was ever established is at the University of Tennessee. There's also one in Tampa at a university there. But Texas State University
That's
has
the biggest
claim
one.
to the largest. But
Love it.
I found out about it in the strangest way. I was coming out of the grocery store and I got in my car and my battery was dead. And so I had to call a ride share. I had to call an Uber so that I could get home, before my ice cream melted.
Right? Right.
And the ride share that picked me up, he had just dropped off a professor from the airport
Uh-huh.
at the Texas State Body Farm, and he was telling me about it. And I thought, are you kidding me? I live near, like, I knew I lived near Texas State
Right. But
University,
you didn't know what was
but
there.
I didn't know this was at Texas State University. And I thought, like, I'm a huge horror fan. So I
Yes.
thought, are you kidding me? This is near where I live. This is the best thing ever. So I immediately, like, I put my ice cream away, and
Right.
then I
That's important. You
immediately,
have your priorities, right?
yes, I immediately started researching it, and I thought, how I need to put this in a story. How can I put this in a story? I contacted the professor that runs the body farm out at Texas State and said, may I please interview you? I'm writing a book. And when he found out I was writing a children's book, he thought, I mean, he thought it
Like,
was
this girl is
amazing.
weird.
He was completely on board because he thought that that was just fantastic, especially as my questions got stranger and stranger. Like, what would you do if one of the bodies disappeared? But no, he was 100% on board because he was so excited that I wanted to present his field to
Right.
kids. But yeah, that's how I found out about it, and I'm so excited that I did because I absolutely love this sort of thing.
Right.
And so I was really excited to be able to show forensic science to kids.
That's so fantastic. And it's just ridiculous because, like you said, these bodies get up and they're moving around, and I love it. Feels almost, when I was reading it, like it's science fiction-y, because it almost feels like, could that be real? Could a zombie like come about because of that? So how did you, without, and I don't even know how you're going to go about this, without spoiling it for those who want to go read it, how did you create this? I'm going to create a zombie like this. How did that idea come about?
So my whole my whole intention with the book was, so like I said, I am a horror fan, and one of my favorite genres of horror is zombies. Train to Busan is a Korean zombie movie that is probably my favorite movie of all time. I love it. So I was really excited
Nice.
that I was going to incorporate zombies into this body farm. But my intention was, because I was presenting forensic science, was to be as scientific as possible first
Awesome.
and as respectful to what the actual scientists are doing out there as well.
That's cool. So we're being ridiculous, but we're not making fun of what they're doing.
Exactly.
I like that.
And to also realize that while I am a huge horror fan, and I admit that, man, I watch some incredibly gory stuff, I also write for children.
Yeah.
And I realized that, I have to make it age acceptable. So I was going to make this as accurate as possible. Like everything that happens to the zombies in the book
Right.
is what happens to bodies as we decompose. It's not just
Love it.
gratuitous zombie gore. Like what happens to our poor main character zombie is what's going to happen to a body as it
Yes.
decomposes. That's it. It's scientific. And I made sure that my editor for this book knew that, so she wouldn't think I was just putting in like
What are you
all
doing
of this
here,
like
Adriana?
gratuitous, like this poor kid's, oh gosh, his finger fell off, or oh my gosh, his arm has just, it's what would happen, and I really
Right.
wanted it to be as scientific as possible. And so again, so we do have this problem where these zombies have come back to life, and we also have to figure out a way to make them permanently dead again. So I had to call in another expert, scientific expert that I know. And luckily, my sister is a professor at the University of Texas Nursing School. And I said, hey, I have kind of a unique problem for you that I need
I've got
some
a
help
problem
with.
here. Can you help me? I got to bring a body back to the
Exactly.
dead.
And she actually helped me brainstorm not so much the how they came to life. That one I kind of messed around and figured out on my own, but she was actually the one that came up with how they fix the zombie problem.
Right.
Um yeah, she was the one who came up with the solution. So she's the one, I say, that I joke that you want on your zombie apocalypse team.
Good.
Uh should
For
that come about, she's the one you want to have on your
that
team.
happened. So, and I guess I did not realize how much I love middle grade horror and middle grade spooky books because when I was 18, I saw this awful movie that traumatized me for weeks. I just was, after that, I was like, nope, no more, nothing, nothing, nothing scary or anything. And so my husband would ask me to watch different things, and I was like, nope. And he's like, well, it's not like that. It's not. And I was like, that's the problem. You don't know until you're sitting there watching it. Because I used to be
And
able
then
to
all of a
watch
sudden,
scary things, but then all of a sudden I was just like, it's gotta be all or nothing in life now, apparently. And so just, these last couple of years, but especially this year, I've been reading more middle grade, and I'm like, this is where I am. This is my safe place for being scared, that I can sit there and I can enjoy this. And even in yours, like I can laugh while I'm reading it. Like not all of them
yeah.
have the humor, but yeah, that I found my happy place with being able to be in that suspenseful and in that bit of horror and scary again. And so not just for kids, that this is something that you can find a good, because it's never going to be, that's like you were saying, you've experienced the gore in other ways, but this is for kids, so
Yeah.
that there's always going to be a limit.
So I'm actually part of a group of authors called Spooky Middle Grade, and we're all authors
Oh,
that write middle grade horror spooky books because that's our passion. We love giving kids a safe place to experience spooky stories that really are empowering, because
yes,
you have to realize that when you're reading a spooky story, you're in control. You can
yes,
close the book at any time. And what I love about spooky middle grade stories is like all middle grade stories, they're all anchored in hope.
Yes.
Every character is going to overcome. They're going to
Yes.
save the day. And that's what I love. I could have written a contemporary story about a girl dealing with her ADHD, but that's personally for me as an author not how I like to address big topics. Like
Yes.
my debut, The Total Eclipse of Nestor Lopez, is about a boy dealing with his dad being deployed overseas, and I very well could have written a contemporary story about that. But
Yeah.
hey, let's also make him have the ability to talk to animals and also fight a witch, because you know what?
Why not?
Sometimes you don't get to just deal with the big things in your life, those heavy things.
Yes.
You also have to go about your day and deal with some other things too, like fighting zombies, you know? And I think kids really respond. Kids are more open to reading about heavy topics when they get to have some fun too. And so
Yes.
that's why I really, really wanted to show Franny in this way, because I thought, you know, kids are going to be a lot more open to reading about a neurodiverse kid if they get to have, oh wow, a heck of a lot of fun, you know, with her
Running
along the
from
way.
and also befriending zombies.
Exactly.
I love it. I love it. Well, and this book, Skywriters, her sequel, The Sky King, it deals a lot with grief. And so
Hmm.
similar, like what you were saying, that you get to have fun while you're facing a heavy topic. So
Yeah.
I love that because it's going to be a lot harder to get the kid to sit down and approach these things. Instead, we'll just slip it in there and not even tell them it's there. We're not even going to say it is what it is, you know?
Yeah. Well, and I also thought, you know, if I was writing since I'm writing a character that has ADHD, I really wanted to make this book accessible for kids with ADHD.
Yes.
So I really, really wanted to make this book as engaging as possible.
Yes. Well,
Mhm.
and so I've got one that is just very interested in death. And so sometimes that's alarming as an adult when your
Yeah.
child is so into death. And I think of the book, oh, is it called Night Books, where the kid
Yeah,
writes
yeah.
stories? Yes. And he's so into death, and his friends think he's weird, and then he gets sucked into this awful horror kind of situation. And so he's got to kind of decide, am I going to embrace that or not? Like, is
Hmm.
that part of me going to be okay? And that's helpful for me as an adult to be like, okay, we can still be cool. We can like my kid can still be
Right.
okay and be super into things that pertain to death that they're
Yeah.
interested in. And so because that can sometimes, I don't know, just as an adult, you know what I'm saying though, when you're dealing with kids, it can cause you to feel on shaky ground that you're like, what, why are you into that?
But I think it's kind of funny. I think adults are a lot more not, I don't even almost know the right term for it. Kids are a lot more accepting and open to things than adults are, and I think that we don't give kids enough benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And my son, when you were talking about night books, my son, when he was a lot younger, he was obsessed with a book on poison by Sarah Albee, which I thought was hilarious because my husband and I were like, should we be worried?
Right. Right.
You
Because
know, but
that's your
no,
first response as a parent. You wonder, what should you be worried about? Should I be worried about this,
no,
about
it
this,
I
about this?
thought it
Because
was
I'm a parent.
hilarious because honestly now, my son is a junior. He's planning on going to Texas State and studying forensic science. Like that
That's
was why I was
awesome.
also excited to write this book because I was studying, you know, the things that my son is planning on studying. So he and I got to have wonderful conversations about, you know, the things that I was writing in the book.
That's
And
so
because I
cool.
not only was interviewing the professors, I I read a bunch of books
Yes.
also about this topic, not realizing that I'm incredibly desensitized to these things and am very excited about it. And so I would start sharing stories over dinner about some of the things that I had learned, which were incredibly inappropriate, perhaps to share while you were eating. But I, again,
You had to have somebody
sometimes fail
remind you
to
of that.
realize that social cue. So, yes, my husband and son were very happy when I finished writing this book.
That's so awesome. Did you ever visit the body farm?
Um, I it's in the works. When the book came out, the professor that I interviewed, I told him, hey, the book is out. May I send it to you? And he was very excited. And so I sent it to him, and he has invited me down to visit. So
That's
that
so
is in the
cool because
process.
I'm sure there are a lot of people that are interested, and so they have to be like, no, don't come to our body
You
farm.
you have to figure, one, it's a scientific location, and
Yes.
it's also a place that has dead bodies. You want to be respectful of it. It
Yes.
sits in the middle of a very massive agricultural farm because they
Oh,
don't want people just like stumbling onto it. So yeah, it's very
which
protected.
somebody does stumble onto it in the book.
Exactly.
Yes.
Unfortunately, I that was the thing. I kind of had to bend reality because I
Right.
did need certain things to happen in the story.
Yes. Well, you're writing a fantasy book, and at the end of the day,
Exactly.
so you get those allowances as a writer,
Yeah.
give you that creative license, and excellent. Well, I love it so much. I think just ridiculous fun is
Yes,
such
that
a
is
great
my
way to
goal.
describe it.
That is my goal. I think a lot of times as an author, I get asked, "What do you hope kids learn from your book?" Or,
Right.
things like that. And honestly, I really hope with all my books, yes, there are things you can learn, but by and large, I hope kids just have fun reading all my stories. If you read one of my books and forget where you are for a moment, I have done my job.
And I love that. That's one thing that being a literacy advocate, that's
Mhm.
my first and foremost thing that I want for children is to
Yeah,
enjoy reading. And
absolutely.
there's so much great stuff out there that they can benefit from it in other ways, like how we were talking about the ways that they can benefit from learning and empathy and learning about
Mhm.
ADHD. There's lots of great things out there, but at the end of the day, if the child or adult is enjoying reading,
Yeah.
that's the biggest win.
Because I think then they'll realize that they have learned those lessons without without so much like sensing it,
Yes.
without realizing it. Yeah.
Right. And making the effort or making it weird, right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's my 4-year-old's biggest insult right now. You're weird.
Don't make it weird.
Don't make it weird, everybody. Well, I love it so much. I hope it just gets out there, and I feel like it's in a way that it's perfect for spooky season, but that it could be enjoyed whenever throughout the
I
year.
mean, in my opinion, zombies are for year round.
Right?
Zombies are for yes.
Well, yeah, all the movies and the shows out there.
Yep.
And so, well, and so I'm not super into the zombie movies and shows, and maybe it's because of the gore that I'm just not able to get into. But, it's just kind of silly there with being like still zombies. Like they're
Right.
running away at a point. They're running for their
Yeah.
at a point. And so it's got the intense action mixed in with the ridiculous. And so I
Yes.
love that you were able to do that because I think that can be hard. Like I follow this movie review guy and he talks about when, you know, Megan, I did actually I saw that
Yeah.
and he talks about that it is hard when it gets funny because it's hard to mix funny with horror. And I think that you very artfully did that you were able to mix, just ridiculous fun with
Mhm.
having to really run and have that excitement and that a little bit scary and gross at the same time.
Yeah. I think that's my favorite thing in all my books because all my books have some measure of fantasy and a little bit of spooky, but every single one of my books is going to have some measure of humor.
Love it.
Yeah, and because I think that's important. I think it keeps kids engaged, and I think it's important to have you have to have lighthearted moments balance out some of the emotion.
Yes. And it can be hard to do that. And so it's
Yeah,
great that you're
yeah,
willing to approach that and get that in there. I love it.
yeah.
Adrian, I love to share at the end of every interview and find out what is another book that you have that you love about another children's book.
So I have to recommend one of my fellow spooky middle grade authors because I when I read this book, I do actually on my Instagram account every Friday, I do a Friday middle grade book
Yes.
rec but and when I read this book, I thought I am going to be recommending this book forever. It's The Skeleton Flute by Damara Allen.
Okay,
And I don't know if you
I haven't read it, so I can't wait for you to tell me about it because
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. When I think this book has probably my favorite first two chapters I've ever read. Like I would recommend these two chapters to any author as like study these to learn how to start a book because they grab you, they draw you in. You know what the stakes of the story are right away. You are rooting for this main character because everything is going wrong in his life and he wants to fix it, and this mysterious man says, okay, fine, here's a flute. If you play this flute, everything will be fixed. Your parents' marriage will be fine. This, everything's going to
you're
be
set.
solved. And so he does, and of course, has wish fulfillment ever worked in a story and,
Right.
just been perfect? Of
All
course, no, it
magic comes with
hasn't.
the cost, or is it that kind of thing?
Exactly.
All
And
right.
so things obviously go wrong, and our dear main character, has to make a decision if he's going to try to reverse things. And it's so engaging, and it's got some really incredible creepy moments. And the ending is just phenomenal. I absolutely loved it. Because like I said, for me, as someone who consumes so much adult horror,
Yes.
really middle grade horror does not scare me like at all. I
Right.
don't find it creepy. It's just because I know it's written for kids, and
Yeah.
as it
Yeah.
should be. But no, this one had some incredibly awesomely creepy moments that I think
Nice.
kids will just adore. And it was so engaging. I love because I think overall middle grade has kind of tended to the books are getting a little bit too long for a lot of readers. So I
Yes.
do like to see that we are finding more and more shorter books. This was a really good shorter middle grade, and I loved that.
Good.
So I really think it's the perfect story for so many readers, especially reluctant readers, because it
Right.
also read really fast as well.
Well, and I talked in this recent interview with MR Fournette about that, that reluctant readers love spooky because it's cool. It's something that they don't feel like it's the
Yeah.
required reading that they're expected
Yeah.
at school.
Well, and
So
I think it keeps you turning the page. Like that's what I love about writing it. Um you want to know what happens next. Like hopefully I had a kid get mad at me one time because I always end my chapters on cliffhangers, and he was like, "Miss, I have to keep reading." I'm like, "That's the point,
that's my
dude."
goal in life. I want you to
Exactly.
finish my book.
So,
I love it. And I'm on some Facebook groups with librarians, and that's often a question is what's a first chapter book that I can do? Because not all books lend well to reading just one chapter and getting the kids to want to read it. So that's great to know to say, okay, I got one for you.
this would be a perfect one because the first two chapters aren't that long. You could actually just go ahead and read the first
Cool.
two and it would
Okay.
be perfect. Yeah.
Awesome. I do. And I love those short, quick little chapters
Mhm.
because even though like they're short and you feel like, oh, I can just read one more. But then all of a sudden you've read 50 more pages because each one was short and it just felt so doable, right? To just
Yeah.
one more. Love
Yeah.
it. Love it. Well, thank you so much, Adriana, for taking the time to talk with
My
us today.
pleasure.
I can't wait to share and get this book out there. Just a fun, fun book. Thank you for
Yep.
taking the time to write such a fun story.
Thank you.